Hey everybody, today we're going to look at the final 12 governor's elections for next year, 2026. And here's the table that includes the ones we're going to cover today. So last time we left off on New York. So the first state today is going to be Ohio. So let's get into it. We're going to use Wikipedia. And this is going to be an open seat because Mike DeWine is term limited. And I've already covered this race recently because for the Republicans, Vivek Ramaswamy looks like he's going to make a run here. But we already have the Attorney General, Dave Yost. He's declared his intent to run. So if it's Yost and Ramaswamy, those are going to be two major candidates. Now this state has gotten fairly red, so there's going to be a bench of Republicans here if the need arises. Now it's early, but Ramaswamy seems to be the favorite. If we go down here and take a look at the endorsements, Ramaswamy has a few of them already, but we've got some early hypothetical polling here. And Ramaswamy is at 57%, Dave Yost is at 26%, 10% undecided. Now that's just with GOP primary voters. But Ramaswamy has become kind of a national figure over the past year. He's young, he captures the Trump energy, and I think the base is going to be a pretty big fan of him. Now Democrats are of course going to feel the opposite. We can't forget about their side either. It's been a little while since they won an election here for governor, but they have a small bench here that they could dip into. One declared candidate here that's going to be Amy Acton. Now any of them could become the nominee, but maybe a higher profile candidate here might be Tim Ryan. Of course he already ran for the Senate against J.D. Vance and he lost. There's other potential candidates here as well, including Sherrod Brown, the other senator who just lost to Bernie Moreno. So there's not nobody here for the Dems. The problem is the state has just become a lot redder, especially on the cultural side. There would have to be a Democrat here that does tap into that appeal. It can't just be purely economic. So it's an uphill climb, but the governor's race usually gives the political minority an opportunity to win a race statewide. But having said that, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would say that Vivek Ramaswamy would be favored to be the next governor of Ohio. We'll see what happens, but let's go on to the next state. We've got Oklahoma. It's a pretty red state, not exactly a lot to take a look at here, but it is going to be another open seat. Kevin Stitt is term limited, so that usually means the focus is going to be on the Republican side for the primary. We've got one declared candidate. That's the Attorney General, Gentner Drummond. It's an unusual name, and Drummond did narrowly win that primary race for AG. At the time, I recall some discussion about he's actually a secret liberal, but now that he's got a track record as AG, he might be the early frontrunner in this race. Now, it would be surprising if no other higher profile candidates got into the race. There's a list of potential ones here. One might consider the lieutenant governor as a likely candidate to make a run for governor once that office opens up. So we'll see if we get any fireworks here with the GOP primary. But this page here on Wikipedia actually has nothing listed for the Democrats. They already had former Republican turned Democrat Joy Hoffmeister running in the last election against Stitt. That didn't pan out at all. It's tough to imagine Democrats having any success for this office, but you never know. Maybe in 6 months something comes up, this race looks different. We'll be following it, but let's go on to the next state. We've got Oregon. This is the opposite. This is a blue state. And we've got Tina Kotek here. She could run for re-election. She's not yet announced. Now Kotek's popularity has not been all that great, so she's technically vulnerable. It's not even impossible she gets challenged in a Democratic primary, but the safe assumption is Kotek would be the nominee if she decides to run, which I would guess she would. Now the Republicans have not won a race here in a long time. There's only one potential candidate here. That's Chael Sonnen. His background is in MMA. I really don't know what this guy is capable of politically, but considering this state, I would guess Republicans need to have a more moderate establishment type of figure. So because it's so early, just like with Oklahoma, the field has not really filled out at all yet. I don't think it's impossible Republicans can flip this seat. They've gotten close over the years, including last time in 22, but that was an open seat. Eventually the drought for the GOP should end, but the safe assumption here is Tina Kotek would be able to hold on given the lean of the state and given how Trump is in office. Next, we've got Pennsylvania. Here we've got Governor Josh Shapiro, the Democrat, who could run for a second term. He's not yet announced, but I would guess he's going to do so. It looks like Bob Casey has declined to challenge Shapiro in that primary. That would have been entertaining if after Casey takes a loss in the Senate, he challenges Shapiro in the primary for governor. Now Shapiro is fairly popular, but this is technically a pretty purple state. So who do the Republicans have lined up? Well, nobody's in just yet, but you've got Congressman Dan Muser and you've got Stacey Garrity. She is the treasurer, so she was elected statewide. Now there's two other statewide elected Republicans here outside of Dave McCormick in the Senate. There's Tim DeFore, the state auditor. He's not listed here as a candidate. And you've also got newly elected Attorney General Dave Sunday. He's declined to make a run, which makes sense. He just got into office. You've also got potentially Doug Mastriano with a second run, but I would say that's pretty unlikely to happen at this point given how poorly he did. So the GOP side here is wide open, and it's further backed up by this poll here. This is outdated, it's from last April, but you've got 80% here undecided. So I think Shapiro here is clearly favored to win. Maybe somehow he runs into a scandal, maybe somehow everything lines up for the GOP and they make it competitive. But the best bet for the GOP here is to wait for it to be an open seat, possibly in another 4 years. So if they've got some talent waiting, like maybe Stacey Garrity, they might not want to burn her out in this upcoming election. Let's keep going. Let's go to the next state. We've got Rhode Island. Here we've got Democrat Dan McKee, who looks like he's going to make a run for another term. Now, McKee does not have stellar approval ratings, but if he is the incumbent running, I would guess these other Democrats are not really going to challenge him. McKee did face a competitive primary back in 22 when he ran for his first full term, but I would think this time it's unlikely he's going to get challenged. Now, what about the Republicans? Do they stand a chance here? Well, the one potential candidate is the one who lost to McKee last time. That's Ashley Kalus. If this is all the Republicans have is running who they ran last time, I would guess they're not going to have any success here. But the problem for the GOP here is almost any candidate is likely to lose. With polarization and the Democrats in control of this state, it's not impossible, but it's unlikely the GOP can have some success here. Here's an interesting potential independent candidate here, niece of former Senator Chris Dodd. So right now there's not much to say. McKee is going to be favored until things change. Let's go on to the next state. It's going to be South Carolina. So this is going to be an open seat. Henry McMaster, he's term limited. And this is a red state. A lot of potential Republicans that could get into this. A bunch of them are listed here, including the lieutenant governor. You've also got Ralph Norman, but maybe Nancy Mace might be the most notable candidate here. She's been in the news recently and even over the past few years. She's faced primary challenges, but she's prevailed. She's been labeled as too moderate at times and too controversial other times. Maybe she's got the secret sauce to be the next governor. We've also got potentially here Mark Sanford, former governor, former U.S. rep. I don't think Sanford would have much success in this primary. And what about the Dems? Well, they've got a thin bench here. They're likely going to have to dip into the state senate or the state house. It's not totally impossible they could win here, but it would take a lot for this state to flip. So we'll come back to that one. Next, we've got another red state. It's South Dakota. And we've got a brand new governor here, Larry Rhode. He stepped in after Kristi Noem joined the Trump administration, so he might be looking to run for a full term. A couple other potential candidates here, including Dusty Johnson, U.S. rep, and also former Governor Mike Rounds. He's in this poll here where he has 25%. Now that poll is from back in 23, so it's not really all that valuable. Now, unless Rounds recently said he's not going to make a run here for governor, I have heard his name thrown around as somebody who could leave the Senate and maybe come back into state government. So we'll see what happens there, but the Democrats have nobody listed here. It's been an extremely long time since they had a governor here that was a Democrat. Now, the race back in 2018 was actually kind of competitive between Kristi Noem and Billy Sutton, so that should give Democrats some hope that they could be theoretically competitive here. But for now, this should be a very easy hold for the GOP. Next, we've got Tennessee, and here's another open seat. We've got Bill Lee. He's term limited, and we recently had Republican John Rose declare he's going to make a run. Now, the other notable candidate here is going to be U.S. Senator Marsha Blackburn. Her name has been thrown around as maybe making a run, but of course that would require her to leave the Senate. That could create some other issues. There's other candidates that might get in as well, but it's unclear if this is going to be a competitive primary or if John Rose is just going to run away with it. There is a poll here from January. Marsha Blackburn had a commanding lead, 71% to John Rose at 13, so that might give Blackburn a vote of confidence, but that poll was sponsored by her. Democrats have really nothing going on here. They've got Steve Cohen, U.S. rep. He's declined to make a run. I would guess somebody like Gloria Johnson could be a potential candidate, though she did just lose to Marsha Blackburn for the Senate race. So for now, this is a safe red state. Next, huge state here, it's Texas. Now, this state does not have term limits for governor, and Greg Abbott is already in his third term right now, and it looks like he's running for a fourth. It's a long time to be governor. That would break some records. So it's hard to imagine anybody challenging Abbott. There's no potential candidates listed here, and I think Abbott has done a pretty good job at maintaining relative popularity given the state. It seems like he's made enough of an appeal to the Trump base. Even though there's been a couple of speed bumps over the years, he does look like he's favored to win another term. After the last election in 24 for the Dems, it doesn't look like they're going to have any momentum to actually make this race competitive, whether it's Abbott or whether it's somebody else. So a couple of lower profile candidates here for the Dems. You've also got Matthew McConaughey, the actor, who's declined to make a run as an independent. So it's way too early, but right now it looks like Abbott should cruise to a fourth term. Next, we've got Vermont, and this state has 2-year terms for governor. It doesn't have its own dedicated page yet here on Wikipedia, but that's the absolute electoral juggernaut, Phil Scott, Republican, running in a blue state. He's already on his 5th term. He could run for 6, he could retire. Either way, I would not be surprised. If he runs again, it's hard to not think it's going to be another massive landslide, but if he retires, then this race is easily going to become competitive and could flip. So we've got 2 more. more, let's go to Wisconsin. This state also does not have term limits, and we've got incumbent Democrat Tony Evers. It's unclear if he's going to run for a third term. He's getting a little bit up there in age, but I don't think that would hold him back too much if he ran again. If he doesn't run, Dems do have a bit of a bench here in this state. There's a couple of local Milwaukee politicians here. Then there's a few others here, including some statewide elected officials. So if Dems want to get some younger energy here in this state, then of course Evers should step aside. But if that happens, that could help the Republicans. They've got their own bench in this state. You've got a couple that are more local, and plus you've got U.S. Rep. Tom Tiffany that might make a run. You've also got potentially Eric Hovde, who just came up short in that last Senate election in 24. Personally, I don't think he should make another run at it, but I also did not think he would be that strong of a candidate last time. Turns out he almost won it. Also, Rebecca Clayfish, former lieutenant governor. She's previously been considered too establishment friendly. That could help her in a general, but it could hurt her in a primary. I also don't see former sheriff of Milwaukee County David Clark on here as a potential candidate. I think he'd be too controversial, but there's probably some other candidates here that might get in a little bit later on. Now, as for the general election, this should be extremely competitive either way. Evers' 2 wins have been pretty narrow, but if the national environment does favor the Dems, they cannot afford to lose this seat. But the Republicans know this state is at least purple, and Evers does not have strong favorability ratings, so they've got an absolute opening here that they don't want to pass up either. This is an easy, pure toss-up race. It should be exciting. We're going to follow it as time goes on. The last race here is going to be in Wyoming. Now, this is another open seat. Mark Gordon, he's term limited. Now, there's not much to say here. There's a few potential candidates that could get in, including Harriet Hageman, the U.S. Rep. But looks like Governor Mark Gordon might actually be challenging those term limits. So that's kind of an unusual situation. But in the end, I don't think it matters at all. Democrats have nothing going on in this state whatsoever. Almost any Republican is likely to win by at least a couple dozen points. But as always, something crazy and unexpected could happen, so we'll check back here at some point in the future. But for now, that's it in Wyoming, and a look at every other governor's race happening next year in 26. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the races in this video? Which of these is the juiciest and most exciting race? Which do you think is the most likely to flip in the general election? And are we going to see any other surprise candidates make a run? Let me know down below. On your way out, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.